Flash it up. Don't die.
Not getting rid of that.
Of course.
Sorry, I have a class that goes from 2 until 4:30.
How are you doing?
Consulting is when people hire you on a 1099 basis to pay you by the hour. So if I do IT, I've done IT level consulting, sometimes for brief extensions, sometimes for months at a time. And basically, I'm not an employee. I'm working on a 1099 basis. I submit timesheets either directly to my customer or when I was working at the timesheets, OSG would bill the customer. The customer would pay them, I would get paid.
It's kind of like just like a contract.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's not being a full-time employee.
Whenever I heard that, I was assuming that if you were consulting, they were saying, you'll find us better solutions. Like we're gonna.
Well, that's something consultants do. I mean, you can be a contract program. A lot of the consulting I've done over the last 25 years has been, I go into organizations and say, here's why your project's failing. Here are the changes you need to make. They pay me a lot of money, then they ignore me, and the project fails anyway. You'll be hearing me talk about it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Got a question? Yeah, as soon as we're done. Once you guys meet immediately. Next lecture is probably about 20 minutes.
So anyway, I think that we let's get started. Now, where I was hoping to do
Awesome.
No, somebody also plays about 14 on Slack.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so that's the same thing. I think that's my Yeah, I think that it's just nice meetings or something.
you're still fragmented from different schools. It's like, you can get them separate. Oh, well, of course, and but like whatever the case, like you can start really small and get it working really well with like one thing or two things. So that's perfectly fine. So it's not really like that. But you have development class. Yeah. So I'm not a CS major. So the only languages I know are just what's in Java. So I would probably be a more student job. So you don't have to. They all betray. I know. They betrayed you. They betrayed us. I need to see. Did you see if that guy was this
Yeah, we're gonna have the most beautiful iOS app ever.
We have like so many good features.
We really appreciate
One person drives a keyboard. Talking to everybody. It's not that hard, and it's kind of like
This. I suspect this will only be about 20 minutes.
look if I come sit by
And organizing yourselves, gathering in teams, right here in the room, again, ours until at least 4:30. I don't know if there's any classes in here afterwards. Why people and teams matter. Okay. Let me preface this simply by saying, and again, I'm getting ahead of the reading. So I'm not going to focus, other than hit some of the high points. I'm not going to go over this in a lot of detail. Study after study over the past 40 or 50 years has shown that the single biggest predictor of the success or failure of a software project are the people working on it. Not the technology, not the methodology, not the funding, but the actual people working on it. And the problem is that there is far more demand for actual physical bodies in the IT industry than there are qualified people to fill those demands. May not feel that way. How many of you are job hunting right now? And I'm sure, and how many of you have hunted jobs? I'm sure you've suffered frustration at times and said, okay, why is this so hard? I'm clearly qualified. Companies are really bad at hiring people in IT for a number of reasons. We'll talk about a few of those. I will also address up front. I'm going to talk about the aspect of talent in software engineering, and usually at this point, my students start to get nervous and say, what if I'm not good enough? You're seniors in a good CS program. You're good enough. Trust me. There are people out there working in IT, well paid, who are really wretched at what they're doing. You're good enough. And I suspect most of you are very, very good indeed. there was a hand up over there. Yes?
I was just wondering, you mentioned IT a lot.
Yeah.
I think I've had like the wrong idea about the term IT, like this whole time. But, you know, since we're all, I imagine most of us at least are CS majors, you know, like what exactly is IT in terms of CS?
Out in the industry, this is a good question, because there is an IT department. In fact, my son, Aaron Vivian, manages all the labs and everything else for the IT program over in the School of Technology. And from their point of view, IT refers to network management, system administration, cybersecurity, and so on. Out in the real world, information technology simply means information technology. It means everything that's running on anything that's digital. Software, hardware, everything. So I refer to myself as an IT consultant. That means I deal with information technology. It encompasses everything. And I should have made that clear earlier. Okay, first article which you're going to read, if you have anyone, has anyone actually read this yet? Oh, good for you. Well done, reading ahead. Op-ed piece that I wrote for Byte magazine 24 years ago. And this is summing up what I'd already observed then, which is that people matter more than anything else, and that the demand was outstripping the supply, faculty, talented people. The story I tell, and I tell this in the second article that you may have read in the Webster 1 stuff. I graduated from BYU in 1978, bachelor's degree in computer science. When I graduated, there was about 120 students total in the CS program. When I moved back to Provo in 1985, the department found out that I had moved back, and a number of professors still knew we had done well in the program. And I immediately got this invitation to come teach. And I thought, you know, I think I told you last week I was horribly flattered. What I didn't realize is that in those 7 years, the program had grown from 120 to 1,000 students. And they were desperate. And I was sort of teaching canning fodder. You know, I think I told you my very first semester I taught 3 sections of 142 with a total of 700 students. But here's the interesting thing. I was having a conversation. Gordon Stokes was my faculty advisor when I was undergraduate. He was still there in the department teaching. And I was having a conversation with him one day about this stunning growth in the computer science department over the past 7 years. And he said, yeah, he said, but here's the interesting thing. He said, as far as I can tell, we have the same number of really good students. He said, not the same percentage, the same absolute number of really good students. And talking to him and some of the other professors, part of what happened, and by the way, this was universal. I think I grew, there was a big peak in '85 in computer science enrollment. Everyone thought it was the next law or medicine. You went and got a CS degree and you were going to be rich like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. And a lot of people went into it, and then people discovered, no, it's actually kind of hard. We're going to go get our MBAs. Cheap job, I know. But my observation, at that point I had worked out in industry for several years, and I had discovered firsthand the wide variety of quality that was there. Again, another story, which I tell in one of the articles that you're going to read, most of you, some of you have read, most of you are going to read, is that when I was an undergrad in the 70s, I took 404, which is actually my favorite class. And at that time it was taught by Tad Norman, who was the former department chair, and the semester I took it, there was someone who was a lot like me, someone who had worked in industry for like 20 years. And in his case, he was taking a year off just to teach. And we're talking about this issue, qualification, certification, you know, good programmers versus bad programmers. And he said, in class, he said, if you knew which ones to select, you could go out in industry and pick half of all the people working in what back then was called data processing, we call it IT today, take half of all the people working in data processing and take them out in the field and shoot them. And not only would no deadline slip, a lot would be advanced. And I thought, oh, that's cold. And then I graduated a year or two later and said, oh my gosh, he was an optimist. I was dealing with source code. I was using source code at places like General Dynamics, and I was having to work on other people's source code, and it was atrocious. It was horrible. And this is source code being used to like model cruise missiles and, you know, stabilize large space structures. And so that this is a key issue. I wrote this back in '96. That was 10 years after I taught at BYU, and it was 24 years ago. And the problem hasn't gotten any better. It's still out there. How many of you have been in situations where you have worked with or near someone who clearly was not qualified to be there as per? Yeah, look at the hand. Just look around at the hands, okay? I want to ask you to tell stories. I'm sure you can tell some great horror stories. But it's the reality. Now, you add to this that most organizations are actually really bad at filtering out and hiring good people. Identifying, I should say, and hiring good people. You know, instead you get stuff, there's a classic story from the late 90s of a job posting at a major corporation where they're looking for people with 5 years programming of Java. And Java had only actually been out for like 3 years. You see stuff like that all the time. They want certifications, they want this, they want that. Now, I wrote this about 12 years after I wrote the article for Byte. This is just a blog post. But this is after even more time, particularly a lot of time, screening consultants for when I worked at OSG. Because we would basically go in and put 5, 10, 15, 20 consultants, developers, senior process mentors, senior architects in there. And we would screen the people that we were hiring as consultants, and it was a long and tedious process to try and figure out who would do well and who wouldn't. Actually, OSG was pretty good at it. I was chief technical officer there. 5 things. Talent. There is talent in IT, and it's not a single talent, and it's not a you have it or you don't have it. I liken it to D&D. You have a set of different talents, and it's sort of bell curve-ish. Well, I think actually it's sort of you sort of have a big lump towards those who have it, and then it tapers off very quickly. I've known people who are extremely good at architecture. We're extremely good at software quality assurance. We're extremely good at cranking out thousands of lines of bug-free code. We're very good at envisioning effective user interfaces. And frankly, it's no different from music or art or other disciplines. How many of you know or have ever dated a music major? I dated a music major my freshman year at BYU and decided it was one of the hardest majors at BYU. And it is. Because you not only have to establish proficiency in all these instruments that you're not interested in, and or vocal stuff, you really have to be talented. You cannot make it as a music major if you do not have inherent musical talent. At least that was my assumption. And I've since had late confirmation because my daughter-in-law has a master's degree in music performance from BYU, and I saw all she went through. Both in getting a bachelor's and a master's. Talent isn't everything. A lot of great code is written by people whose talents are modest. I don't consider myself a particularly brilliant programmer. I'm more the bulldog type. Give me a problem and a set of books or access to Google, and I will work on something and work on something and work on something until I figure out how to make it work. It's actually what makes me good as an expert witness, because I pick up entirely new programs and often new languages and new technologies, and I've got to become good enough to write an expert report on it. And any number of times I start out thinking, okay, can I really do this? And I just start the same process. I look for threads I can grab and start figuring stuff out, and the pieces start fitting together. It's one of the reasons why I think that computer science education is important. A lot of people out there in the industry have only ever worked in one programming language for one environment. Or their approach to software engineering is sort of magic incantation. All of you, though I know some of your classes may have seemed less important than others, you have a foundation. I found my CS program helped me immediately as soon as I started working out of college. I found I had an advantage over my fellow programmers who were around me because there were solutions I could apply and things I understood, or I would say, oh, this is just like this, and like this, and like this. Experience. For me, experience is the #2 most important thing. Because, and pardon me because you're going to hear this probably a dozen times through the course of this class, my observation is that the industry not only reinvents the wheel, it reinvents the flat tire. The truly tragic thing about these large-scale failed projects that I review, either as a consultant or as an expert witness, is they were utterly predictable. And they were predictable based on the books you're reading. Mythical Man Month, Peopleware, stuff that's been out for decades. It's the same root causes over and over again. Professionalism. Now, professionalism for me means be reasonable, show up, do your work. I have worked with prima donnas. They're a pain in the butt, and eventually they tend to get fired. They make, incredible demands. They belittle everyone else. That's not professionalism. Education. Those with education in computer science or information technology have an advantage over those who don't. Pure and simple. You have a broader perspective. You know some foundational stuff. Yes?
Education, you mean formal education?
Yeah.
College education?
So, yes, I do mean formal education, though the advantage and curse of working in this field is you're going to be educating yourself for the rest of your lives. That's why I have 3 or 4 bookshelves, large bookshelves filled with books in information technology. Skills. These, ironically, this is what most HR departments are going to look at. The last one on the list. Well, do you have this certification? Do you have X number of years with this language? Do you have this? Those can be very handy because, again, you personally don't want to reinvent the flat tire. But at Pages, when we started at Pages and made the decision we were going to develop for the next computer, the next step operating system, only one engineer I hired had ever used Objective-C before, which is what Next Step did. No one else used Objective-C. Everyone else who was doing anything he was doing object-oriented was doing C++. Whole small time. So I looked to find great software engineers, and they had to learn Objective-C, and frankly, most of them learned it very quickly. When I was an undergrad, I had never programmed in COBOL. And my senior year, when I wasn't sure where I was going to be working at, there was a book in the computer science had a small library, and there's a book there on COBOL, and I spent a couple hours and read the book and said, if I ever need to learn COBOL, I can learn COBOL. Fortunately, that was my entire story with COBOL. So sometimes you can be learning new skills. Languages change all the time. Fads change. Any observations and experiences or questions about these aspects as they relate? Yes?
How do you know if you have talent? Like, what does that look like?
What does it look like?
Yeah.
It's fun. You get stuff done. Stop and think about the projects that you voted for, or the projects you proposed. You proposed them because you said, yeah, that's an interesting idea, and I think I know how I can contribute to that, or how I might accomplish that. The question is pretty much just, you know, and I say this without a great knowledge of the projects that you have worked on as individual projects, and without knowing how well defined those projects were by the people giving you the assignments. But stop and think about projects where you looked at a problem and said, oh yeah, this is, I can figure out how to do this. Now remember armor. This is where you have to have some confidence here. There are things you don't know. And you're going to beat your head against the wall. That doesn't mean you're not talented. It means you're going through that painful learning experience. And you're having to step back and figure out what it is. Yes?
When you're looking for your software development team for pages, if you weren't looking for skills that they had, how did you find the people?
That's a very good question because it comes back. I've found people all sorts of different ways. I hired people I knew of. One of the first people I hired was a programmer I knew who worked for a local software company there in San Diego. Silicon Beach Software. They've had some successful projects. I hired him. I fired him a month after I hired him. And it's part of what made me start rethinking about how I picked people. Because I kept giving him tasks. This was very early days. I mean, I was working on the fundamental concepts of the program and the architecture, and I would give him tasks and say, I need you to go think about this particular issue deeply for the next month. And he'd come back 2 days later with a page of paper that had stuff that's like, no, you don't understand. I need you to really spend time chewing on this problem, coming up with stuff. And he never came up with anything useful. And then he started coming in late and leaving early, and I finally had to fire him. He was unhappy. Here's what I've learned, because that was my learning experience in the hiring process. Single best predictor of success for a software hire is the strong recommendation of someone whose opinion you trust. And that's sort of a catch-22. All of you know catch-22 is. Read Joseph Heller. Anyway, it's basically, it can be a problem because who do you trust? But case in point, I had hired Rick Gessner. Actually, I think he was the only person in Pages we hired through a headhunter. And he was a good hire. And he joined the team. And not long after he joined the team, he came to me and said, Bruce, he said, there's this guy, he come from Arizona, from Phoenix. He said, there's this guy back in Phoenix you really need to bring in for an interview. He says, his resume isn't going to impress you. He has a GED. He has no college. He said, but this is someone who at age 18 was writing his own object-oriented operating system. Successfully. Well, okay. And we brought him in for an interview, and our interview process at Pages was that every engineer had a one-on-one interview with the candidate. And then we all had to get together, and we all had to give the candidate a thumbs up. Anyone in the engineers could say, no, I don't think we should have it. And of course, we'd have some back and forth and see if they had concerns that could be addressed. But other than that, everyone had to be agreed. Early days, it was, the first person I hired was my sister because I'd worked with her 3 times before. I knew she was an excellent software engineer. Second one was this person I mentioned that I ended up firing. Third person, I had recommendations from some people in the Bay Area who spoke highly about this programmer who actually was conversant with Next Step and Objective-C. His name is Bruce Henderson. Probably one of the best hires I ever made. He and I are still best friends, almost 30 years later now, and still do stuff together. And then it was sort of a one-off process, bringing people in. Looked at a lot of resumes before I'd call someone on the phone. Would call a lot of people before I would bring them in for an interview. And usually, if they got to that point, I say 10-10-10. It was actually, we did enough screening that by the time we brought them in for an interview, it was probably every third person we'd end up hiring. One of the people we hired that way was this brilliant programmer who made a lot of contributions but was just increasingly unstable and unprofessional. And after a couple of years, we finally had to let him go. Yes?
Where do soft skills come to play in this?
That's a very good question, because one of the biggest problems I had at Pages was that we had all these bright programmers, and the team almost tore itself apart. And I was at a loss as to what to do. Fortunately, Rick Gessner, and this is why Rick Gessner is one of the best programmers I ever hired, he had conflict resolution skills and training. So when the team was threatening, you know, to sort of rip itself apart because you had all these very strong egos, Rick came to me and said, Bruce, let me talk to the team. He said, I've had training and this sort of stuff. And he sat down literally with us as a development team and coached us in, here's how you disagree with people without attacking them. You know, here are the conversations you have. These are the ground rules. This is what you have to do. And he literally saved the team. If I hadn't had Rick there, I'm not sure if the team would have lasted. I think I would have lost some key people. Beyond that, and this is one of the articles, and I'm not sure I don't think it's in this reading group, but no, I think it's in Webster too. Along the lines, I came up with something which I have since seen referenced. It turned out not to be an original idea. It was original to me. Which is, I did an offsite with all the and this is about the same time frame. Did an offsite with all the developers. And this is in San Diego, so we were sort of out on a patio, not far from the beach. It was a nice setting. Had a big whiteboard, and had every engineer say, I asked every engineer, what are your goals? Why are you here? Why did you come to Pages? What do you hope to accomplish here? And we listed everyone's goals there. And so what this meant was that all of us knew why everyone else was there. And then I said, what goals can we fashion as a team that will help everyone to achieve their individual goals? And we came up with a list of 4 or 5 goals. You know, here's how we were going to behave as a team. And we could see how those team goals, they weren't something I was imposing. This was something that came up from the team. And everyone said, yeah, if we do this as a team, then I can achieve my individual goals. And then and only then we said, okay, how does all this support the company being successful? We sort of went back and looked at stuff and said, well, you know, maybe we need to tweak this or tweak this a bit, or to a certain extent, you know, here's something we need to keep in mind when we're accomplishing that. So I think soft skills are very important. Managing software engineers is not for the faint of heart. It's very easy to do it badly, and a lot of companies do it badly. That's pretty much what the whole book Peopleware is about, are those soft skills. And as DeMarco and Lister say, it's not that most companies set out to destroy teams, they just act that way. And it's true. Any other questions before we move on here? Dead Sea effect. This is something I observed when I was consulting at Fannie Mae back in the mid-90s. OSG was in there. I was head of about 25 consultants we had in there, helping them with a number of different software projects. And they had their own IT department, but they brought us in because they considered their IT department somewhat inadequate. But they had some individual good programmers. But what I noticed during the 2 years there is all the good programmers kept leaving. And what they were left with was their own in-house IT group was getting steadily worse. And I call this the Dead Sea effect. Jordan River flows into the Dead Sea, fresh water evaporates, Dead Sea becomes more and more saline. Not supportive of life. I posted an article about this, it got linked to in Slashdot, and boy, it blew up in traffic. And people kept saying, yes, yes, this is exactly what goes on. How many of you have worked in an organization where you've seen the best people leave? And you may be one of those best people. Anyone want to tell a story about what you observed or whatever? Yeah.
So this is actually right before I left. I was working in Micro Focus, and there's rumors that our office was going to be shut down. So a ton of people started jumping ship. And in fact, we sold off one of our companies. Everyone jumped onto that company right before that. So yeah, and our IT was constantly a mess.
Yep. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
I had this idea to implement a game called Hive.
And everyone left. I'm so sorry. It sounded like a great game. Did you have?
Yeah, I can. What was the question?
Well, just have you worked in a situation where you've seen this leaving good programmers leaving faster than they're being replaced with good programmers.
Yeah, the experience I got is usually the environment. If there's not a good environment and your crew, it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm actually, even if I'm making a lot more, this is ridiculous. Like I don't want to do it. So that's another reason.
And that's an important point. It is all pretty much geared towards the environment. At Pages, I had occasionally, we had a great CFO, John Curry, learned a tremendous amount from him. But John, being a CFO, was always looking for ways to cut costs. And we'd set up things, for example, we had a kitchen. I mean, you know, it was a sink and a fridge. But we had stocked with M&Ms and with crackers and with sodas, and they were all free. And at one point, John came and said, you know, I'd like to sort of eliminate that because that's a cost thing. I said, John, I said, you cannot save enough money by eliminating that over a period of years that we would lose by having one engineer leave. And I had several of those discussions with them. And there's often a penny wise, pound foolishness there. Well, again, as you get into peopleware, you're going to learn all the ways in which companies drive out good programs. But just be aware of this Dead Sea effect. Surgical team, yeah. Read chapter 3. This is actually DeMarco and Lister. Peopleware chapter 2 is talking about the same thing, that management. Again, back at Pages, having taught this so many times, I'll just ask you to forgive me if I repeat stories. Pages was a full year late in shipping. That was the most agonizing year of my professional life because I had helped put together the schedule and clearly had botched it and had. This is pretty much when my whole professional focus turned to why do projects succeed or fail. We did ship. But that year was a very tough year. And at one point, probably about 9 months into it that year, we had the CEO and the CFO talking about, you know, well, maybe what we'll do is if they ship by December, we didn't ship in December, by the way. If they ship by December, we'll have bonuses, but if not, we're going to look at, you know, doing some cutbacks of things. And I, of course, personally told them, no, that's counterproductive. These people are working 70 plus hours a week, which itself was silly in retrospect because you're not that productive working along for months at a time. But I had one of the software engineers. Of course, this went around the company as far as, you know, what they were talking about. I had one of the software engineers stop me in the hallway and say, don't they know they're dealing with grown-ups? Often management looks at software engineers as, because we tend to dress funny at times, or have Nerf guns, or things like that. And they don't realize this is a form of stress relief, because we're working much longer hours than any of them are. They think that they just can tell us what to do, and that people are interchangeable parts, and they're not. And this is where a lot of organizations fail. They also fail because they don't give the engineers time to renew and refresh themselves. Education is one of the most important things for someone working in IT. You want to keep up on stuff. And yet, too often, that's discouraged or punished. You say, I want to go to this conference and learn about this. And they say, no, if we do that, you'll just leave for a better job. They have that exactly backwards. You leave for a better job to learn the stuff that you want to learn. They let you learn it at your current job. It's like, this is cool. What can I learn next year? Piano waits for you. Yeah. No such thing as sustained over time. You're going to be reading all this. People under time pressure don't work better, just faster. Read Accelerate chapter 3. Okay, this is a great chart. We'll talk about this 2 or 3 times. This is a organizational model for business cultures. Of course, it's has clear distinctions here, and in any given organization, you're actually going to see a mix of these three cultures. But you have these very power-oriented ones, basically shut up and do what we tell you to do. You have ones that are sort of bureaucratic, they're playing nice, but stuff never gets done because no one can make a decision. And then you have ones that are focused on actual performance. Yes?
Is this describing like management, how it interfaces with the software team?
Yep.
Or are we talking about, okay, not.
This is describing the environment that management creates for the software team.
Got it.
What they allow, what they don't allow. And this is actually, this is out of chapter 3 of Accelerate, which is also on your reading list for the next 2 weeks. Chapter 7, yeah. Okay. I'm doing ahead of the reading, so a lot of the stuff is kind of like, okay, what are we learning here? Do the reading, we'll go back and recover some of the stuff in 2 weeks. I would suggest you take the time to get together as a team now to at least introduce yourselves to each other. And I will post before I leave for New York tonight. I've got a red eye. I will post the team assignments as I currently have them. Any other questions at this point about the next 2 weeks? I'll get the slides up there quickly too, so you have those. Yes?
So on the wiki, we'll be updating the members of our team on our respective pages, maybe enhancing the description of.
Yeah, just go to your project page that you set up. I will kill all the projects that got killed. So just go to your wiki page and put team members there, and if you want to enhance the description.
As far as creating like code repositories, are we going to be adding branches to that wiki and GitHub?
Yeah, you can do it. You can add branches to that wiki for your code repository. You can set up one elsewhere. I have no need or desire to see the code.
Great.
If you want to set up a separate repository somewhere, that's perfectly fine. There's one more question back here. Okay. Yes. I'm used to it.